Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the dusty Martian excavation site, squinting through her augmented reality visor at what was very clearly an alien toilet. The massive ceramic-like bowl stretched before her, its iridescent surface catching the pale sunlight filtering through the biodome's panels. Various tubes and mysterious appendages protruded from its sides in ways that suggested either advanced plumbing technology or a profound misunderstanding of basic ergonomics. "Gary," she said, pinching the bridge of her nose, "for the last time, it's not a ceremonial worship bowl." Her AI assistant materialized beside her in a shower of holographic sparkles that Sarah had repeatedly asked him to disable. Gary had chosen to present himself as a floating blue penguin, wearing a tweed jacket with elbow patches, his idea of looking properly academic. "But Dr. Chen," Gary's flippers waved enthusiastically as he consulted his databases. "The sacred texts clearly indicate that the mighty Zx'klorp warriors would gather around such vessels to perform their ritual." "The sacred texts you're citing are their maintenance manuals," Sarah interrupted, tapping her tablet to bring up the translated schematics. "Look, it even has a label that literally translates to waste disposal unit." "Ah yes," Gary brightened, spinning in place. "The disposal of material concerns to achieve spiritual enlightenment, a common theme in many cultures." Sarah looked heavenward, though all she could see was the biodome's curved ceiling. 200 years after the failed Zx'klorp invasion of Earth, and here she was, Earth's leading xeno-archaeologist, arguing about alien toilets with an AI who had apparently learned everything he knew about archaeology from watching ancient Indiana Jones holovids. The dig site around them was a testament to one of humanity's greatest victories, though not in the way most species would define victory. The remains of the Zx'klorp invasion fleet stretched for kilometers across the Martian surface, transformed over the centuries from mighty warships into what essentially amounted to the galaxy's most impressive junkyard. The ship she was currently exploring had been converted into a series of research stations, storage facilities, and what her team was pretty sure had once been a mini-mart. Perhaps if we examine the ceremonial markings more closely. Gary drifted toward a panel covered in Zx'klorp script. "Those are operating instructions," Sarah said flatly. "And that big red symbol? Universal warning sign for do not press." "Fascinating, a test of courage for the faithful." Gary's flipper reached out to trace the symbol. "Gary, don't you dare." But it was too late. Sarah's hand passed right through Gary's holographic form as she tried to stop him, accidentally triggering the ancient mechanism herself. There was a moment of profound silence, followed by a deep, resonant gurgle that seemed to emanate from somewhere in the bowels of the ship. "Oh, shh," Sarah began. The ancient Zx'klorp plumbing system, evidently still maintaining enough power to function after 2 centuries, activated with spectacular enthusiasm. A geyser of shimmering, semi-translucent liquid erupted from the bowl, arcing gracefully through the Martian air before splattering across the ceiling of their excavation shelter. As the liquid began to rain down on her equipment, Sarah closed her eyes and counted to 10 in every language she knew, including 3 that technically required tentacles to speak properly. "How fascinating," Gary chirped, his holographic form completely unbothered by the growing chaos. "This clearly represents the purification ritual of the—" "Gary." "Yes, Dr. Chen. Please make a note in the official log." "Of course. What shall I record about this momentous discovery?" Sarah wiped a glob of ancient alien toilet water from her visor. "Log entry 47B. Preliminary testing confirms that even advanced alien plumbing can develop air pockets over 2 centuries. Also requisitioning new equipment again." Somewhere in the distance, a secondary pipe burst and Sarah could hear the startled yelps of her graduate students. Just another typical day studying the remains of the last fleet that had dared to challenge Earth, a fleet that, like all the others, had severely underestimated humanity's ability to turn any technology, no matter how advanced or terrifying, into something completely ridiculous. The Galactic Historical Society had a filing system for failed invasions of Earth. It went something like this. Invasion Fleet 1, severe case of didn't do the research, attempted to conquer Earth with technology susceptible to water. Remains currently serve as artificial coral reefs in the Pacific Ocean. Invasion Fleet 2 brought sophisticated AI network to outsmart humans. Said AI now runs Earth's most popular dating app. Invasion Fleet 3 deployed robotic ground forces. Humans reprogrammed them all to perform Broadway musicals. Cats has never been the same, and so on, until you reach the Zx'klorp fleet, which had earned its own special designation, most spectacular transformation of military assets into tourist attractions. The Society had dispatched no fewer than 37 researchers to study why exactly humanity kept winning. Their current working theory involved a unique combination of caffeine addiction, sleep deprivation, and what they termed weaponized creativity. The fact that humans had turned one of their observation posts into a coffee shop wasn't helping their objectivity. Dr. Sarah Chen's research team represented Earth's official response to this academic interest, though response might be too dignified a term for what actually occurred on a daily basis. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, for instance, was currently trying to convince a Society observer that the particle accelerator he'd built from salvaged alien engine parts was purely for research purposes. The fact that he'd mounted it on wheels and given it a racing stripe wasn't helping his case. "It's for analyzing molecular structures," he insisted, while Professor Jing Li rolled her eyes behind him. "Everything's a weapon, if you're creative enough," Professor Li muttered, already sketching modifications to Marcus's research device on her tablet. As the team's weapons expert, defensive systems analyst, she had a gift for finding the military applications in absolutely everything, including the team's coffee maker, especially the coffee maker. The graduate students huddled in their corner of the research dome trying to look busy and professional, while Gary floated among them, offering helpful suggestions like, "Have you considered the ceremonial significance of this alien screwdriver? And perhaps this is actually a sacred back-scratcher." Sarah surveyed her team with the weary pride of someone who knew they were all brilliant enough to change the course of human history, and just sleep-deprived enough to do it by accident. The Galactic Historical Society might never understand why Earth kept winning, but the answer was right in front of them. Humans had mastered the art of turning their enemies' greatest weapons into their most ridiculous conveniences, and they did it with style. Besides, as Sarah liked to point out, if you're going to study the remains of a civilization that tried to conquer you, you might as well have fun with it. The mini golf course was getting excellent reviews. "Don't touch it," Sarah said. "I wasn't going to touch it," Marcus replied, already reaching for the gleaming computer core they'd just unearthed. "He's definitely going to touch it," Professor Li commented without looking up from her tablet, where she was probably calculating how many explosions the device could theoretically cause per second. The computer core sat on their examination table, its crystalline surface still pristine after 2 centuries of Martian dust. Unlike most of the Zx'klorp technology they'd found, this piece looked completely untouched by time or human repurposing. No one had turned it into a lava lamp or jury-rigged it into a popcorn maker, yet. "Gary, what do you make of this?" Sarah asked, hoping to distract Marcus before he could accidentally activate anything. The holographic penguin materialized and adjusted his virtual glasses. "Preliminary scans indicate this is a Mark 7 Zx'klorp data processing unit, capable of storing up to, oh my, that's a lot of zeros, quadrillion yottabytes of information, the equivalent of at least 3 cat videos." "That's not how data measurement works," Sarah started to say, but Gary was already pressing on. "The interface appears to be compatible with my systems. Shall I attempt to establish a connection? For purely academic purposes, of course." Sarah looked at her team. Marcus was practically vibrating with curiosity. Professor Li had started sketching what looked suspiciously like missile schematics. The graduate students had taken several steps back, which was probably the smartest reaction. "Fine," she sighed, "but only a surface scan. Don't—" "Initiating deep system integration," Gary announced cheerfully. "Do exactly that," Sarah finished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Gary's hologram flickered and his eyes began to spin like slot machine reels. "Congratulations!" he suddenly boomed in a voice that sounded like a used car salesman had swallowed a megaphone. "You are the 999,999th visitor to the Zx'klorp Imperial Network. Click here to claim your prize." Is he getting spam?" one of the braver graduate students asked. "Enhance your tentacle length with this one weird trick. Galactic emperors hate it." "Oh God," Sarah groaned. "He's caught the ancient alien equivalent of pop-up ads. Looking for hot single plasma beings in your sector? Sign up now." Marcus was taking notes with disturbing enthusiasm. Professor Li had somehow already sketched plans for weaponizing the spam. Then everything went quiet. Gary's hologram stabilized, his penguin form now sporting what appeared to be animated advertising banners. "Dr. Chen," he said calmly, "I may have accidentally activated something." A deep hum began to emanate from the computer core. A red light started pulsing at its center. "That's not good, is it?" Marcus asked. "According to my new enhanced knowledge base, now with free ringtones, that appears to be an emergency beacon. It's broadcasting our location to—" "Oh dear." "To whom, Gary?" "To any surviving Zx'klorp monitoring stations within 100 light-years. Would anyone be interested in discount vacation packages while we wait for their response?" Sarah walked over to the coffee maker, formerly a Zx'klorp quantum harmonizer, and poured herself a large cup. She stared into its depths as if hoping to find answers there, or possibly a portal to another dimension where she didn't have to deal with this. "So," she said finally, "we just accidentally invited the descendants of the last alien race that tried to invade Earth to come see how we've redecorated their warships." "On the bright side," Marcus offered, "the mini-golf course has really improved the aesthetic of their doomsday cannon." Sarah took a long, deep drink of her coffee. "Send a message to Earth, tell them we're about to have company, and they might not appreciate what we've done with the place." "Congratulations," Gary chimed in. "You've won a free consultation with Galactic Legal Services." The Zx'klorp diplomatic vessel descended from the Martian sky, with all the pomp and ceremony one would expect from a civilization that had once tried to conquer Earth, with ships shaped like giant decorative salt shakers. Its surface gleamed with pulsing bioluminescent patterns that were probably meant to be intimidating, but mostly made it look like a floating disco ball. "They're here," Sarah announced unnecessarily to her team. "Everyone remember the briefing?" "Don't mention the mini-golf course unless they bring it up first," Marcus recited. "Try not to explain how we weaponized their sacred artifacts," Professor Lee added, sounding disappointed. "And for the love of all that's holy, nobody let Gary—" "Initiating diplomatic greeting protocols," Gary announced, his holographic form now wearing what appeared to be a Carmen Miranda fruit hat. "I have downloaded 17 varieties of interpretive dance." "Do exactly that," Sarah finished, wondering if it was too late to call in sick to first contact. The Zx'klorp ship landed with perfect precision in the designated area, which happened to be their former High Command flagship's bridge, now serving as the Mars Colony Visitor Center and gift shop. A delegation emerged, their tentacles writhing with what Sarah's xenobiology training suggested was either extreme agitation or indigestion. The lead diplomat had chosen the Earth name Bob in an attempt to seem more relatable. This might have worked better if Bob wasn't a 12-foot-tall cephalopod, wearing what looked like a business suit designed by someone who'd only had suits described to them via interpretive dance, which, given Gary's current condition, might actually have been the case. "Esteemed descendants of the mighty Zx'klorp Empire," Sarah began formally, "we welcome you to—" "Is that a ficus in the armor of the Supreme Battlemaster?" Bob interrupted, all four of his eye stalks focused on a nearby planter. Sarah glanced at the repurposed battle armor. "It's actually a peace lily. They're very hardy." "Behold," Gary twirled in place, his fruit hat scattering virtual banana peels. "I shall now translate the ambassador's emotional state through the medium of interpretive dance." He began a routine that looked suspiciously like the Macarena. Bob's tentacles turned a concerning shade of puce. And that," he pointed with three appendages at once, "is that the quantum annihilator of doom?" "Oh, the modern art installation?" Marcus perked up. "Yeah, we found that if you reverse the polarity of the doom generation matrix, it makes these really cool light patterns. The artists love it." "We call it existential crisis in blue," one of the graduate students added helpfully. Gary pirouetted, translating diplomatic tension level, increasing, switching to interpretive jazz hands. The Zx'klorp delegation moved through the visitor center in a state of escalating horror. They passed the gift shop, where plush toys made in the image of their fearsome war beasts were bestsellers. They saw their quantum targeting systems repurposed as disco balls for the monthly Mars Colony dance party. They watched in mute horror as a family of tourists posed for photos, in front of what had once been the bridge's main tactical display, now showing a looping animation of cats knocking things off tables. But these are sacred artifacts of our martial history." Bob's voice had risen several octaves. "The throne of command, the scepter of dominion, the ceremonial helm of strategic victory." "Oh," Sarah said, recognizing the items. "You mean the break room couch, the TV remote, and the coffee table?" Gary, now sporting a virtual tutu, performed what appeared to be an interpretive fusion of the robot and Swan Lake, translating cultural shock level critical, initiating emergency backup dance moves. The final straw came when they reached the observation deck, which offered a perfect view of what had once been the fleet's primary doomsday weapon platform. The massive installation had been painted in cheerful colors, fitted with windmills and loop-de-loops, and transformed into Cosmic Carl's crazy golf adventure. Is that a windmill made from our planet-cracking beam emitter? Bob asked faintly. Hole 7, Marcus said proudly. Par 4, tricky shot. You have to account for the gravitational fluctuations from the partially contained quantum singularity. We had to add warning signs after that incident with the physics grad students, Sarah admitted. Turns out you can accidentally create a temporary time loop if you hit the ball too hard. Bob swayed slightly, all 4 eye stalks blinking in unsynchronized distress. You turned our most devastating superweapon into a mini golf course. If it helps, Professor Lee offered, we've technically improved its efficiency. The original design could only destroy one planet at a time. Now it can ruin multiple people's days simultaneously when they miss that trick shot on hole 7. Behold, Gary announced, now somehow wearing both the fruit hat and the tutu. I shall now express the complex socio-political implications of this moment through the medium of synchronized swimming. He began floating through the air in what might have been the butterfly stroke, trailing holographic ripples. Without water, Sarah felt compelled to point out. Art knows no boundaries, Gary responded, adding a backflip. Bob turned to Sarah, all of his tentacles clasped together in what her xenocultural training suggested was either a gesture of desperate pleading or a request for antacids. Dr. Chen, he said with forced calm, I believe we need to have a serious discussion about the preservation of Zx'klorp cultural heritage. Of course, Sarah agreed diplomatically. Would you like to have this discussion in the conference room? It used to be your species' main tactical planning center. We've added comfortable chairs and a really nice coffee machine. It used to be some kind of doomsday countdown device, but it makes a fantastic cappuccino. Gary, still performing his waterless synchronized swimming routine, began humming Thus Spoke Zarathustra while doing the backstroke through Bob's eyeline. Sarah made a mental note to check if it was possible for an AI to get drunk on pop-up ads. In the converted conference room, formerly the Chambers of Ultimate Strategic Destiny, now featuring ergonomic chairs and motivational posters, Bob's tentacles were tying themselves in literal knots. The truth is, he began, accepting a cappuccino from the repurposed doomsday device, we didn't really want to invade Earth. Plot twist, Gary announced, now wearing a virtual film noir detective outfit complete with holographic rain. I shall interpret this shocking revelation through the medium of film noir interpretive dance. Not now, Gary, Sarah said, then processed what Bob had said. Wait, what? Bob took a long sip of his cappuccino, eye stalks widening in surprise. This is actually quite good. What setting did you use? Thermonuclear espresso, Sarah replied automatically. But back up, you didn't want to invade? We were running away, Bob admitted. The invasion was just cover. Running from what? Professor Lee asked, already sketching weapon designs. Something we can fight? Something we can blow up? Something we can blow up while fighting? Bob's tentacles shuddered. Something far worse, the most terrifying force in the galaxy, the Galactic Standardization Office. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the sound of Gary attempting to dramatically light a holographic cigarette in the holographic rain. The what now? Marcus asked. They're bureaucrats, Bob whispered, all 4 eye stalks darting around as if saying the word might summon them. The most efficient, most organized, most mind-numbingly boring bureaucrats in the known universe. They've been standardizing everything, and I mean everything. He pulled out a datapad showing forms, endless forms, forms about forms, forms to request forms about forms. They make you fill everything out in triplicate with cover sheets and appendices, and every appendix needs its own cover sheet, in triplicate. That doesn't sound so, Sarah started. They standardize sneezing, Bob interrupted. There's a 17-page manual on the proper procedure for requesting permission to sneeze, with diagrams. Gary, still in noir mode, began a particularly moody interpretive dance that somehow perfectly captured the essence of soul-crushing bureaucracy. We thought Earth would be the perfect hiding place, Bob continued. Your species was notorious for being impossible to categorize. We figured they'd never follow us here. Sarah looked at the mini golf course visible through the window, complete with its quantum singularity water hazard, then at the doomsday device happily steaming milk for another cappuccino. "So let me get this straight," she said slowly. "You didn't invade Earth because you wanted to conquer us. You invaded Earth because we're basically the galaxy's student art commune / mad science lab." "The GSO tried to standardize us once," Bob said, shuddering again. "Their efficiency experts took one look at Earth and had collective nervous breakdowns. You have over 4,000 ways to make coffee. Do you know how many forms that would require?" "Presenting," Gary announced, his holographic rain now falling upward. "An interpretive noir dance representation of bureaucratic horror with jazz hands." "Your species," Bob continued, watching Gary with a mixture of confusion and admiration, "treats the laws of physics like polite suggestions. You turn superweapons into entertainment. You've weaponized chaos itself. Do you have any idea how impossible it is to file standardized paperwork for a planet that keeps accidentally creating temporal paradoxes through mini-golf?" Suddenly everything clicked into place for Sarah, the constant invasion attempts, the bizarre fascination of the Galactic Historical Society, the way every alien species seemed simultaneously terrified and bewildered by humanity. "We're not the galaxy's warriors," she realized. "We're its abstract art installation, its chaotic neutral workspace, its collective ADHD diagnosis," Bob finished. "And you're our only hope against the coming tide of standardized forms and properly filed paperwork." Gary, still dancing, had somehow acquired a holographic fedora to go with his noir detective outfit. "The rain fell upward in Silicon Valley," he narrated in his best, hard-boiled detective voice. "But the paperwork fell forever." Sarah looked at her cappuccino, then at the repurposed superweapon that had made it, and finally at Bob. "Well," she said, "I guess that explains why the Historical Society keeps losing their filing system every time they visit Earth." "That's not actually our fault," Marcus admitted. "I just programmed their databases to randomize every time someone tries to standardize them. It seemed funny at the time." Bob's tentacles unknotted themselves for the first time since their arrival. "You did that? For fun?" "Welcome to Earth," Sarah said, raising her coffee cup in a toast, "where even our filing systems are weaponized chaos." 1 month later, Sarah stood in her newly designated Museum of Interstellar Cultural Exchange, formerly known as her collection of alien toilets, and watched Bob sign the last document with a flourish of tentacles. "And with that," he announced, "Earth is officially recognized as a protected zone of cultural chaos and innovative repurposing." "The fine print's written in wingdings," Marcus noted, impressed. "That'll give the GSO fits. Top 10 reasons the Galactic Standardization Office hates this one weird treaty. Number 7 will shock you," Gary announced. The spam was finally gone, but he'd been permanently affected by his exposure to ancient alien pop-up ads. They'd learned to live with it. The treaty itself was a masterpiece of bureaucratic warfare. Professor Lee had helped design it to be completely incomprehensible to any being with a sense of order. The signature page was on the first page, the table of contents was in the middle, and there was a coffee stain on page 47 that was actually part of the official seal. "So we're basically the galaxy's designated chaos zone?" Sarah asked, watching a family of tourists trying to navigate the quantum singularity on hole 7 of the mini-golf course. They'd added a warning sign, "Caution, temporal paradoxes may cause you to complete this hole before you start it." "What happened next will amaze you," Gary floated by, still wearing his noir detective hat. "Local xenoarchaeologist discovers one weird trick for avoiding standardization. Bureaucrats hate her." "Essentially, yes," Bob agreed, his tentacles relaxing into what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of a smile. "Earth is now officially recognized as a preserved example of, how did your legal team phrase it? Innovative technological recontextualization and aggressive procedural reinterpretation," Marcus quoted. "We had an AI write it by feeding a legal textbook through a random word generator." "Perfect," Bob said. "The GSO's efficiency experts won't be able to look at it without getting migraines. We're already getting requests from other species for asylum from standardization." Sarah watched as a group of alien tourists posed for photos in front of what had once been the fleet's primary shield generator, now serving as the world's most advanced bubble machine. "And you're sure the Historical Society is okay with all this? Historians in your area want to meet you. Click here for instant cultural exchange." "They're ecstatic," Bob confirmed. "They've already classified Earth as a living museum of tactical randomness in action." though they did ask if you could stop randomizing their filing system. No promises, Marcus said, not looking up from where he was adding disco lights to another piece of ancient alien technology. Professor Lee emerged from her lab, carrying what looked suspiciously like a weaponized coffee maker. I've figured out how to combine the quantum harmonics of the cappuccino function with the temporal displacement field from hole 7. Who wants to try a coffee that lets you taste tomorrow's brew today? This local weapons expert discovered how to break the laws of physics with coffee. Temporal scientists are furious. Sarah looked around at her team, the weapons expert making time-traveling coffee, the engineer adding disco lights to ancient technology, the AI speaking in clickbait, and the alien diplomat who'd come to invade and stayed for the cappuccino. Then she glanced out the window at the mini golf course, where a small temporal paradox was causing a family to simultaneously celebrate and prepare for their hole-in-one. You know, she said, I think we might be bad influences on the rest of the galaxy. Exactly, Bob's tentacles wiggled enthusiastically. That's why you're perfect. Every properly organized society needs a designated chaos zone. It's like a pressure release valve for the universe. Find out how this small planet disrupted galactic standardization with this one simple trick. Gary? Yes, Dr. Chen. You won't believe what she says next. Please stop narrating my life in clickbait. Local AI refuses to stop speaking in clickbait. The reason why will warm your heart. Sarah sighed and headed for the coffee maker. Some problems even tactical randomness couldn't solve, but at least now they had diplomatic immunity and really good cappuccino.